Sarah Mitchell had dreamed of this day since she was 7 years old, playing dress-up in her mother's old wedding gown that pooled around her tiny feet like a white ocean. Now, 23 years later, she stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Willows Hotel, staring at her reflection in an antique mirror that had witnessed countless brides before her. Her dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, custom-made in Paris, with a train that seemed to flow like liquid moonlight. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, adorned with her grandmother's pearl hairpins, and her makeup was flawless, highlighting her green eyes that sparkled with what everyone assumed was joy. But Sarah wasn't thinking about the fairy tale ending she'd always imagined. She was thinking about the text message she'd received 30 minutes ago, the one that had turned her perfect wedding day into something else entirely. The message that had come from an unknown number, containing 3 photos and a few words that had shattered her world. Thought you should know before you say I do. The first photo showed her fiancé, Marcus, in what was clearly a hotel room. The second showed him with a woman Sarah, recognized immediately as Jessica, her own maid of honor, her best friend since college. The third photo was time-stamped just 2 hours ago, while Sarah was getting her hair done, while Jessica was supposedly picking up the flowers, while Marcus claimed he was having a quiet moment with his groomsmen. Sarah's hands trembled as she set down her phone, but her mind was surprisingly clear. She could hear the wedding march beginning to play downstairs, could hear her father's gentle knock on the door, could hear the excited chatter of 300 guests who had come to witness what they believed would be the happiest day of her life. "Sarah, sweetheart, it's time." Her father's voice came through the door, warm and loving and completely unaware that his daughter's heart had just been torn to pieces. "Just one more minute, Dad," Sarah called back, her voice steadier than she felt. She looked at herself in the mirror again, but this time she wasn't seeing a blushing bride. She was seeing a woman who had been betrayed by the 2 people she trusted most in the world. And more importantly, she was seeing a woman who was about to do something about it. Sarah had always been strategic, methodical. It's what made her such a successful marketing executive. What had helped her plan this wedding with military precision over the past 18 months. Every detail had been carefully considered, every timeline meticulously planned, every vendor personally vetted. She knew exactly how long each part of the ceremony would take, exactly when each person would be where, exactly how every moment was supposed to unfold. And now, she was going to use all of that planning for something Marcus and Jessica would never expect. She picked up her phone and began typing rapidly. First, a message to her cousin Emily, who was working as the wedding photographer. Change of plans. "I need you to set up the live stream we discussed for the reception, but start it before the ceremony. Make sure it's broadcasting to the big screens in the reception hall and online. Tell everyone it's a surprise for the guests who couldn't make it." Next, she texted her brother Daniel, who was handling the music. "After the processional, before the ceremony starts, I need you to play the slideshow I gave you last week. The one I said was for the reception. Play it on all the screens." Then she sent a message to her wedding planner, Monica. "Small change to the timeline. Before the ceremony begins, I'm going to make a brief speech to thank everyone for coming. Can you set up the wireless microphone at the altar?" Finally, she texted her tech-savvy nephew Jake. "Remember that backup plan we joked about? I need you to make sure every phone in that room gets the photos I'm about to send you. Use that app you showed me that sends to everyone on the same Wi-Fi network." Sarah had insisted on controlling every aspect of her wedding, including having her own secure Wi-Fi network set up for guests to share photos. She'd thought it would be romantic to have everyone's memories compiled in real time. She never imagined she'd be using it for this as she sent the photos to Jake with instructions. Sarah felt something strange happening inside her. The devastation and heartbreak were still there, crushing and raw, but they were being joined by something else, something cold and focused and powerful. She wasn't just a victim of betrayal. She was Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had built a marketing empire from nothing, who had never backed down from a challenge, who had always believed that actions had consequences. Her father knocked again, more urgently this time. Sarah, everyone's. Waiting. Coming, Dad, she said, and she meant it. She was coming, but not as the naive bride who had woken up that morning. She was coming as someone else, entirely. Sarah opened the door to find her father in his best suit, his eyes misty with pride and emotion. Behind him stood her mother, elegant in navy blue, and her younger sister Claire, who was serving as her matron of honor since Jessica was handling maid of honor duties. "You look absolutely radiant," her mother whispered, reaching out to touch Sarah's cheek. "I've never seen you more beautiful." Sarah smiled, and it wasn't entirely false. She did feel beautiful, but it was the beauty of a storm gathering strength, of lightning preparing to strike. "Thank you, Mom. I feel like today's going to be a day no one ever forgets." As they walked down the corridor toward the ceremony space, Sarah's heels clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that sounded almost like a countdown. She could hear the murmur of voices growing louder as they approached the main doors, could see through the glass panels that every seat was filled, that Marcus was standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking like the picture of a nervous but happy groom. Jessica was there too, of course, holding Sarah's bouquet and wearing the emerald green dress they'd picked out together during a girls' weekend in New York 6 months ago. She was smiling and chatting with the other bridesmaids, playing her role perfectly. Sarah wondered how many other times Jessica had played a role, how many other lies she'd told, how many other moments of their friendship had been built on deception. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" her father asked, offering her his arm. Sarah took it, feeling the solid warmth of his support, knowing that in a few minutes she might need it more than ever. "I'm ready, Dad. More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life." The doors opened, and the wedding march swelled through the room. 300 people rose to their feet, turning to look at Sarah with faces full of joy and anticipation. She could see Marcus's mother dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, could see her college friends beaming with excitement, could see coworkers and family members and friends who had traveled from across the country to be here, and she could see Marcus standing at the altar with his hands clasped in front of him, his face lighting up as he saw her. For just a moment, Sarah's resolve wavered. This was the man she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, the man who'd proposed to her on the beach in Santorini, the man who'd held her when she'd cried over her grandfather's death, the man who'd made her believe in fairy tale endings. But then she saw Jessica, and the moment of weakness passed. Jessica, who had helped her pick out this dress, who had thrown her bachelorette party, who had been the first person Sarah had called when Marcus proposed. Jessica, who had looked her in the eye just hours ago and asked if she needed anything, if there was anything at all she could do to make today perfect. Sarah walked down the aisle with perfect poise, her smile serene and her back straight, every inch the radiant bride. But inside, she was counting steps, timing her pace, making sure everything would align exactly as she needed it to. When she reached the altar, Marcus stepped forward to take her hand, his eyes full of what looked like genuine love and nervousness. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered, and Sarah almost believed he meant it. "Thank you," she whispered back. "I hope you remember this moment." The officiant, Reverend Patterson, who had known Sarah's family for years, smiled warmly at the assembled crowd. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Sarah and Marcus in holy matrimony. But before we begin, Sarah has asked to say a few words to thank everyone for being here on this special day." Sarah saw Marcus's eyebrows rise slightly in surprise, but he squeezed her hand supportively. The wireless microphone was handed to her, and she could see Emily setting up additional cameras, could see the screens around the room flickering too. Life with the live stream, could see Jake in the back giving her a subtle thumbs up. "Thank you all so much for being here today," Sarah began, her voice clear and strong. "When Marcus and I started planning this wedding, we talked about how important it was to us to be surrounded by the people we love most, the people who have supported us and believed in us and been there for us through everything." The crowd murmured approvingly, and Sarah saw her mother dabbing at her eyes again. "We talked about how marriage is built on trust, on honesty, on the foundation of really knowing the person you're promising to spend your life with. We talked about how important it is to have friends who will always tell you the truth, even when it's difficult." Marcus was still smiling, but Sarah could see a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Jessica, standing just behind her, was nodding along with the speech, probably assuming Sarah was building up to some heartfelt moment. "And that's why I'm so grateful that someone cared enough about me to make sure I knew the truth before I made the biggest decision of my life." Sarah paused, letting the words hang in the air. The room was completely silent now, 300 people hanging on her every word. "Daniel, could you start the slideshow, please?" The screens around the room lit up with images, and for a moment, the crowd thought they were seeing a romantic montage of Sarah and Marcus's relationship. There were photos of their early dates, their vacations together, their engagement. But then the images changed. The first photo from the anonymous text appeared on every screen in crystal clear detail. Marcus in the hotel room, shirt unbuttoned, looking directly at the camera with a lazy smile. The timestamp in the corner showed 2:47 p.m., just over 2 hours ago. Gasps echoed through the room. Sarah heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, heard someone's chair scrape against the floor. The second photo appeared. Marcus and Jessica, unmistakably together, unmistakably intimate. Jessica's emerald green maid of honor dress was clearly visible, crumpled on the hotel room floor beside the bed. The sound in the room shifted from gasps to murmurs to something approaching chaos. Sarah could see people reaching for their phones, could see others turning to stare at Jessica, who had gone completely white. The third photo was the most damning. Marcus and Jessica kissing. The timestamp showing 3:15 p.m., 30 minutes before Sarah had received the photos, an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start. "I received these photos 30 minutes ago," Sarah said into the microphone, her voice still perfectly calm. "From someone who thought I deserved to know who I was really marrying and who I was really trusting with the most important day of my life." Marcus had dropped her hand and was staring at the screens in horror. "Sarah, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like my fiancé and my maid of honor having sex in a hotel room 2 hours before our wedding," Sarah said, and even though her voice was steady, the microphone carried her words to every corner of the room. What explanation could possibly make that look like something else? Jessica was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, but she wasn't trying to deny it. She was just standing there, clutching Sarah's bouquet like a lifeline. "But here's the thing," Sarah continued, turning to face the crowd rather than Marcus. "I'm not just hurt. I'm not just devastated. I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the level of planning this must have taken. I mean, think about it. Jessica has been my maid of honor for 18 months. She's helped plan every detail of this wedding. She's been to every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every venue walkthrough. She's thrown my bachelorette party, organized my bridal shower, and held my hand through every moment of stress and excitement." The crowd was silent now, riveted by Sarah's words. "And Marcus, my darling Marcus, has been right there beside me, making decisions about our future, talking about our dreams, planning our honeymoon. He's met with the efficient, He's written his vows. He's picked out his tuxedo. He's told me he loves me every single day for 3 years. Sarah paused, letting the implications sink in. So this wasn't a moment of weakness. This wasn't a last-minute mistake. This was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice to betray me on the day that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, surrounded by everyone we know, after letting me spend $50,000 on a wedding to celebrate a marriage built on lies. Now, Marcus tried to step forward, tried to reach for her, but Sarah moved away. Sarah, please, we need to talk about this privately. Privately? Sarah laughed, and it wasn't a sound without humor, but it was sharp enough to cut. Marcus, you've made this very public. You've involved my best friend. You've chosen to do this on our wedding day, in front of everyone we know. You've made it impossible for this to be private. She turned back to the crowd, many of whom were now openly staring at Marcus and Jessica, with expressions ranging from shock to disgust to anger. But I want you all to know that your time here today isn't wasted, because you're about to witness something that I think is much more interesting than a traditional wedding ceremony. You're about to see what happens when someone who has spent 18 months planning every detail of an event decides to use those planning skills for something completely different. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she glanced down to see a message. From Jake. Done. Everyone's phones just received the photos with timestamps and metadata. Perfect. Now everyone in the room had the evidence, could see the timestamps, could verify that this wasn't some elaborate hoax or misunderstanding. Marcus, Sarah said, turning back to him, you said you loved me. You said you wanted to spend your life with me. You said you couldn't wait to call me your wife. Were any of those things true? Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. His face had gone gray, and he was glancing around the room as if looking for an escape route. Sarah, yes, of course. I do love you. This was just what? Just sex? Just fun? Just something to do while I was getting ready to marry you? Sarah's voice was getting sharper now, the first real edge of anger bleeding through her controlled facade. It didn't mean anything. Jessica finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, it didn't mean anything. It was just, it didn't mean anything? Sarah turned to face her former best friend, and now her voice was deadly quiet. Jessica, you've been my best friend for 8 years. You were there when I met Marcus. You were there when he proposed. You helped me plan this entire wedding. You've been lying to my face for months, maybe years, and you want to tell me it didn't mean anything? Jessica was sobbing now, but Sarah felt no sympathy. Only a cold, crystalline anger that was focusing her thoughts with laser precision. But you're right about one thing, Jessica. It doesn't mean anything. Not anymore. Because both of you have just shown everyone in this room exactly who you really are. And more importantly, you've given me the greatest gift you could possibly give me. Marcus looked confused. Gift? Sarah smiled, and this time it was genuinely joyful. You've saved me from making the worst mistake of my life. You've saved me from marrying a man who doesn't respect me, doesn't value me, and doesn't deserve me. You've saved me from trusting a friend who would betray me without a second thought. You've given me the chance to start fresh, to find people who are actually worthy of my love and trust. She turned back to the crowd, many of whom were now pulling out their phones to document what was clearly becoming the most dramatic wedding ceremony they'd ever witnessed. And you've also given me the chance to show you all something I've been working on for the past 6 months, something I was planning to unveil at the reception as a surprise for Marcus. Sarah nodded to Daniel, who looked confused but started typing on his laptop. The screens around the room changed again, this time showing what looked like a professional presentation. You see, I've been investigating Marcus's business practices for the better part of a year, ever since I noticed some discrepancies in his financial records. Marcus owns a construction company, and he's been telling everyone, including me, that business has been struggling, that money has been tight, that we needed to be careful with our wedding budget. The presentation showed financial documents, contracts, and what looked like email communications. But it turns out that Marcus's business has been doing very well. In fact, it's been doing well enough that he's been able to embezzle nearly $200,000 from the pension, funded his employees, money that was supposed to be set aside for their retirement. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sarah could see several people who worked for Marcus's company in the crowd, their faces changing from confusion to anger as they realized what she was saying. I have documentation showing that Marcus has been falsifying records, creating fake expenses, and redirecting funds that legally belong to his workers into his own personal accounts. Accounts that he's been using to fund a very comfortable lifestyle that includes, apparently, hotel rooms for afternoon trysts with other women. Marcus was backing away from the altar now, his face pale with panic. Sarah, you can't do this. This is illegal. You can't just... I can't what, Marcus? Tell the truth? Show people evidence of crimes you've committed? You're right that I can't do this legally on my own. That's why I've already turned all of this evidence over to the FBI, the IRS, and the State Labor Board. They've been investigating for 3 months now, and they were planning to arrest you next week. Sarah's smile was brilliant now, radiant with satisfaction. But when I found out about your betrayal today, I called Agent Morrison and told him that if he wanted to find you, he might want to check the Grand Willows Hotel. It seems like you have a weakness for making bad decisions in hotel rooms. As if on cue, the doors at the back of this ceremony space opened, and several people in suits walked in, including a woman Sarah recognized as FBI Agent Morrison. Marcus Thompson, Agent Morrison called out, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. You're under arrest for embezzlement, tax fraud, and violation of federal pension protection laws. The room exploded into chaos. People were standing up, talking loudly, some trying to take photos, others just staring in shock. Marcus tried to run, actually tried to push past the groomsmen and flee, but Agent Morrison's partner was already moving to block the exits. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Morrison continued, producing handcuffs as Marcus was cornered near the altar. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Sarah watched with deep satisfaction as the man who had betrayed her was handcuffed in front of 300 witnesses, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, still standing at what was supposed to be their altar, but she wasn't done yet. Jessica, she said, turning back to her former friend, who was still crying and clutching the bouquet. I have something for you, too. Jessica looked up with red, swollen eyes, probably, hoping for some sign of forgiveness, some indication that their friendship might be salvageable. Those photos that everyone received? The ones showing you with Marcus? I've made sure they're also being sent to your boyfriend. Jessica's face went white. My what? Trevor, right? The guy you've been seeing for 6 months, the one you told. Me was just a casual thing, the one you didn't want me to meet because it wasn't serious? It turns out it was serious enough that he was planning to propose to you next month. He actually called me last week to ask about your ring size. Jessica dropped the bouquet, and the flowers scattered across the floor. I thought he deserved to know what kind of person he was planning to spend his life with. Just like someone thought I deserved to know about Marcus. Trevor should be getting the photos right about now, along with a detailed timeline showing that you've been cheating on him with my fiancé for at least 6 months. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed Jessica the screen. In fact, he's been texting me for the past 10 minutes. Would you like to know what he said? Jessica just stared, unable to speak. He said, and I quote, "Thank you for saving me from making the same mistake you almost did. I'm sorry this happened to you, And I hope that bitch gets exactly what she deserves. Sarah looked up from her phone. Strong words from someone who loved you enough to want to marry you. By now, Marcus had been led away in handcuffs, and the FBI agents were talking to several of his employees who had been wedding guests. Jessica was standing alone near the altar, mascara streaked down her face, her emerald green dress wrinkled, holding nothing but empty hands. Sarah turned back to the crowd, which was still buzzing with shocked conversation. "I want to thank you all again for being here today," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. "I know this isn't the wedding you were expecting to attend, but I hope you'll agree that it's been educational. You've seen what happens when people think they can lie and cheat and steal without consequences. You've seen what happens when someone underestimates a woman who knows her own worth." She paused, looking out at the faces of her family and friends, seeing expressions of shock, admiration, concern, and not a little bit of awe. "The reception is still happening, by the way. The food is paid for, the band is here, and the bar is fully stocked. I'm not going to let Marcus and Jessica's betrayal ruin a perfectly good party. So please go to the reception hall. Eat, drink, dance, and celebrate. Celebrate the fact that I discovered the truth before I made a terrible mistake. Celebrate the fact that justice is being served. And celebrate the fact that sometimes, when life gives you the worst possible situation, you can find a way to turn it into something powerful." Sarah's mother appeared at her side, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling Sarah into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of how strong you are." Sarah hugged her back, and for the first time since she'd received those photos, she felt some of her composure cracking. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and the full emotional impact of the day was beginning to hit her. Her father was there too, wrapping both of them in his arms. "Sarah, I don't understand everything that just happened, but I understand that you're the strongest, smartest, most incredible woman I've ever known. And anyone who doesn't see that doesn't deserve you." As the crowd began to slowly file out toward the reception hall, many people stopped to speak to Sarah, to offer support, to express their admiration for how she'd handled the situation. Some were family members offering love and comfort. Others were friends expressing shock and anger at Marcus and Jessica's betrayal. And still others were strangers who wanted to tell her how impressed they were with her strength and intelligence. Sarah was starting to feel exhausted. The weight of the day, the emotional toll of the betrayal, and the energy she'd expended on her elaborate revenge were all catching up with her at once. "Sarah," a voice said behind her, and she turned to see Agent Morrison approaching. "I wanted to thank you for the call today. Having Thompson at a known location made the arrest much simpler than it would have been otherwise." "Will there be enough evidence to convict him?" Sarah asked. "More than enough. The documentation you provided, combined with the financial records we've been able to access, paints a very clear picture of systematic embezzlement. He's looking at significant jail time, and his assets will be frozen pending restitution to the pension fund." Sarah nodded, feeling a grim satisfaction. "Good. Those people trusted him with their retirement savings." Agent Morrison smiled. "If you ever decide you want a career change, the FBI could use someone with your investigative instincts and attention to detail." As the agent walked away, Sarah's sister Claire appeared at her elbow. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you out of this dress and into something more comfortable. You've had enough drama for one day." Sarah looked around the ceremony space, which was now mostly empty, except for the cleanup crew, who were beginning to pack up the floral arrangements and fold the chairs. The screens were dark, the wireless microphones had been collected, and the evidence of her elaborate revenge was being efficiently erased. But the consequences of the day would last much longer. As she walked back toward the bridal suite, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. For a moment, her heart jumped, wondering if it was another bombshell, another revelation that would turn her world upside down again. But when she opened the message, she smiled for the first time all day with genuine warmth. "Hi, Sarah. This is Amanda from Marcus's office. I was at your wedding today, and I wanted you to know that several of us employees have been worried about the pension fund for months. We're so grateful that you exposed what was happening. Also, I run a small marketing company, and after seeing how you handled today, I'd love to talk to you about a partnership. You clearly know how to manage a crisis and execute a plan under pressure. Those are exactly the skills I need. Hope you're okay, and I hope you know that you did the right thing today." Sarah showed the message to Claire, who read it and laughed. "Leave it to you to turn the worst day of your life into a networking opportunity." "It wasn't the worst day of my life," Sarah said, surprising herself with the realization that she meant it. "It was the day I found out who I really am and what I'm really capable of. It was the day I discovered that I'm strong enough to handle anything, smart enough to turn a disaster into a victory, and valuable enough that I don't have to accept being treated badly by anyone." As they reached the bridal suite, Sarah caught sight of herself in the antique mirror again. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair was coming loose from its elaborate updo, and her dress was wrinkled from the stress of the day. But she looked different than she had that morning. She looked like a woman who had been tested and had not just survived, but triumphed. "You know what?" she said to Claire, who was helping her out of the intricate dress. "I think I will go to the reception after all. I'm going to put on something gorgeous. I'm going to eat that expensive food. I'm going to drink that top-shelf liquor. And I'm going to dance with everyone who wants to celebrate with me. That's my sister," Claire said, grinning. "Never let them see you beaten." "Oh, I'm not beaten," Sarah said, stepping out of the dress and reaching for the cocktail dress she'd brought for the after-party. "I'm liberated. I'm free, and I'm just getting started." As Sarah prepared to rejoin her friends and family, she reflected on the strange turns the day had taken. She'd woken up planning to marry the man she thought she loved, and instead she'd exposed his crimes, ended his freedom, and discovered reserves of strength and cunning she never knew she possessed. She'd lost a fiancé and a best friend, but she'd gained something much more valuable: absolute certainty in her own worth and her own power. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her college roommate, who was at the reception. "Sarah, everyone here is talking about how incredible you are. The band is playing Stronger by Kelly Clarkson, and the entire room is singing along. You need to get down here and take your victory lap." Sarah laughed out loud, a sound of pure joy and release. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time, but now she wasn't seeing a bride or a victim or even a woman seeking revenge. She was seeing Sarah Mitchell, a woman who had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and had turned it into the most empowering moment of her life. And as she walked out of the bridal suite and toward the sounds of celebration coming from the reception hall, she knew that whatever came next, she would be ready for it. Because she had learned something invaluable. She was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than she had ever imagined. The fairy tale ending she dreamed of as a little girl hadn't happened, but something better had. She'd become the heroine of her own story, the woman who saved herself, the bride who got the perfect revenge. And that was a much better ending than any fairy tale could ever provide.